How's it going, everyone? Welcome back. Ezekiel Elliott. It was a very, very small, topic when Zeke got released from the Cowboys and say, hey, maybe he wants to play for the Bengals. Should the Bengals pick him up? I feel like that went under the rug real quickly. It's like, well, we understand he's getting older. Who knows how much money the guy wants, but he's clearly on the decline. Maybe the Bengals should avoid that at all costs, considering Mixon is a year younger. He's got far less touches under his belt. But here we are. Ezekiel Elliott's made it known that he's narrowed his options down to the Eagles, the Jets, and the Cincinnati Bengals as the three teams he would like to play for, and he would like to make his decision by the end of next week. So our question now becomes, do the Cincinnati Bengals pursue Ezekiel Elliott? First and foremost, I think and the answer is kind of easy to me. I don't think you turn down a one-time absolute stud top 3 running back in the league at the age of 27, 28 at the right price. I'm not paying this guy over $5 million a year when I say at the right price. Is he going to take that low pay? I don't know. I don't think you pay him more than that at all. But I mean, if Zeke wants to come in at $1-2 million, like a cheap contract, you see like the LeGarrette Blunts of the world or Leonard Fournette, guys like said, let's take the cheap contract. It's like, all right, let's talk. Because there is a place for him in this offense at that price. You have nothing to lose if you're the Bengals. You have a low risk, high ceiling. But is he willing to go that cheap? I thought it was interesting that he named the Bengals because he does know right now Joe Mixon is the starting running back, which tells me Zeke is willing to potentially take a back seat, take a smaller role in the offense, and he's going to be okay with that. And if that's the case, again, we talk, maybe the contract's there. Maybe this guy's championship chasing at this point in time in his career. It's really hard to tell. He brought the Jets up, but if Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets with that, how nasty that defense is, I mean, that team becomes an instant Super Bowl contender. And obviously the Eagles were just there. So it is an interesting dilemma here if you're Ezekiel Elliott. And if you're the Bengals, you have to talk about Zeke versus Mixon. I don't think you cut Mixon to sign Zeke. I think if you were to cut Mixon, to save some cap, you cut Mixon, you sign Zeke, and then you complement him with another back. I don't think you look at Ezekiel Elliott as a starting running back. But the cold hard facts are, between Zeke and Mixon, they are very, very similar running backs at this point in time in their career. Not from a style of running, maybe not their conditioning, not the wear and tear. Obviously, Mixon has a good, about 400 or 500 less touches in his career than Zeke does. They ran the wheels off this guy in Dallas. And that's a big deal later in a guy's career. How much does he have left in the tank? The legs start to come out from below you, whatever. Understandably so. But from a pure statistical standpoint, the last 2 seasons, Mixon, 1.9 yards per attempt after contact. Zeke, 1.7 yards per attempt after contact. That was 2022 or 2021. And 2022, both of them were averaging 1.5 yards per carry after initial contact was made, which was, again, not very good by all standards here. And I like using that metric. I also like looking at the broken tackles metric. Zeke was at 25 carries per broken tackle, Mixon 26, so Zeke slightly beat him there. But I like looking at those metrics because obviously it's easy to sit here and say, well, the Dallas Cowboys always have one of the best offensive lines in the league. And the Bengals offensive line, well, not so much. So it's difficult to just sit here and look at the yards per carry game when you have those situations. If you want to play the yards per carry game, Mixon 3.9 yards per carry this season, 4.1 the year before. Zeke 3.8 this season, 4.2 the year before. Again, very similar numbers there. I think what's more intriguing here to me is when you dive into, let's say, something Joe Mixon's favored in is his yards per carry when leading. Mixon's averaging 4.3 yards per carry when the Bengals were leading last season. Zeke was averaging 3 yards per carry. To me, that's a very big concern because Zeke's yards per carry were substantially higher when he was trailing, which meant when he was trailing, odds are there was some garbage time runs. Maybe teams were playing defensive more and they just ran the football and he got some more yards. I can't explain the exact reasoning behind that, but I can say one thing. When you're leading the football game, you want that closer of a running back that is going to eat the clock up, get you some big yards. And Mixon clearly outplayed Zeke in that category last season by 1.5 miles. But where Zeke beats Mixon, do we still call him a better pass protector than Joe Mixon at this point in time in his career? And do we still, well, there isn't a debate, I don't think, when it comes to the red zone carries. Zeke has and still is one of the best backs in the league when it comes to finding the end zone. Last season, Ezekiel Elliott saw 20 or 35 attempts inside the 10-yard line last season and converted 12 of those attempts into touchdowns. Joe Mixon saw 29 touches inside the 10 last season from a rush standpoint, we should say attempts, and he converted 6 of those into touchdowns. So Zeke, again, we talk about how this could be your potential specialist guy here with a high ceiling, and you use him in the red zone. And this is, again, something the good football teams have been doing in the past, is you don't pay for that expensive back. You get your specialist guys. The Patriots did it for years. We're seeing other teams do that. You bring in, the Patriots' way of doing things was James White. You brought James White in to pass protect. You brought him on your third down back, and you had your horse. You had your big guy for your first and second down back, or first and second down carries situations, could find the end zone. And I think the Bengals could line a situation like that up where you say, even if it was 3 running backs they had, if you're only paying Zeke $1 million, $2 million a year, I mean, we see teams do that all the time, pay their second, third strings, that kind of money. You bring Zeke in for $1, $2 million. You draft the running back that you feel like can split the load with Joe Mixon, maybe even Zeke splits it. You just go full on committee with the Bengals. Or potentially you sign Zeke and find somebody else, you cut Mixon. I don't think you say, let's cut Mixon for Zeke. I want to see them play together. I want to see them both utilized in this offense, if that's the situation the Bengals would want to go by. And again, that's why we say everything has a price. We're not overpaying for Zeke by any stretch of the imagination, not at this point in time in his career. But it really does bring us an interesting situation, because now that we're seeing the tight ends come off the board for the Bengals, it's looking more and more like they're not going to spend that cap on a tight end. And again, if they're going to have the cap money to lay around to sign Zeke for a year contract, which is probably what it would be, maybe 1, possibly 2, probably 1, on a cheaper deal, it's not hurting your cap situation, I don't think. And at that point, you say, better safe than sorry. Last thing you want to see happen is Mixon get hurt. Your running backs become a bust, nothing works out, and you're just kind of lost in no man's land. At least you have a guy in Ezekiel Elliott that he's a veteran, he's got the experience. He may not be the player he once was, but he does still offer something from that standpoint. And it's a value pickup, I think, there. And I think there's so many questions. And I'm sure Zeke's talking this over with teams. My biggest question, again, it's his role. If you're going to sign this guy on a really cheap deal, and you're just role playing this guy, and you're not worried about 3-down backing him, he's not worried about getting 200 touches, 200 carries on the season. You look at the way he played last season. Again, it's clear. It's been proven year in and year out. You cannot. It's just, unless you're a freak of an athlete, unless you're an Adrian Peterson. I mean, Derrick Henry's trying to prove it too. You just, once you hit that 2,000 touches mark as a running back, you really see the decline start to happen. I mean, that's a lot of hits. That's a lot of shots you're taking. That's a lot of damage your body's taking. You really start to feel it as you get older. And that's the big concern with Zeke, is it doesn't feel like he's going to be able to continue to be that 200-300 carry back. But what we seen him do last season was start the season off pretty solid. It was December and January where we really seen his numbers decline. And it goes back to the point of saying, if Zeke was on a pitch count, maybe he's seeing 5 to 10 carries a game at most. Later in the season, those legs are fresh. He's feeling a lot better. He's feeling the best he's felt in years, a couple years possibly. All of a sudden, you're looking at, okay, now we're feeling good about this. We bring this guy in on a red zone. He's going to convert for us. Maybe he starts to wake up a little bit more in a passing game. He was at one point in time a great passing game running back. We've seen, again, those numbers decline as well. I just think you look at it and say the risk reward. You see this happening all the time where potentially washed up players, potentially these veteran players that were once good, they'll sign on these cheap deals and they'll go win a Super Bowl because teams and the good coaching staffs find ways to implement these guys, use their strengths, and take advantage of the talent that they are for the cheap contract they're willing to take. But again, everything's up in the air here. Again, I don't think it's a debate right now. We brought all those numbers up. I don't think it's a debate going into next season. I believe Joe Mixon's the better running back at this point in time in their careers. Just to be perfectly clear about that. But Mixon's got his weaknesses in areas. Zeke's got his strengths in areas, and you put that together, you can make things work. And I think it's a low risk, high reward opportunity if he is indeed willing to sign on a low contract. That's everything. The contract's everything for the Bengals. You don't even entertain this guy if he's wanting 5+, I don't think. Then again, it depends on the Bengals situation. If guys we're getting at the end of free agency, and Bengals got about $17 million in cap space still for the season. I consider a one and done contract. Would you rather the Bengals spend $5 million on Zeke, or have 10 million in cap space entering 2022. Well, I mean, at that point, what do you have to lose? But Zeke's got a week to decide, and the Bengals got to figure out where they're going with free agency and the draft, everything. A lot of questions. Be interesting to see how things turn out. Love you guys' thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time.